Hardly a week seems to pass when we're not hearing about someone who's either been scammed or almost been scammed, whether it's in the process of applying for residence before people have arrived or after they've arrived and they're entering into the various transactions that you have to enter into when you come to a new country. We're hearing about people who are in different ways being done out of their money or being put at a disadvantage because a process that they paid for hasn't been completed. And so I wanted to make a video about this because there's a common phenomenon that we're seeing that plays out in most of the situations that we see, and also situations that we've personally been involved in. So it's something that applies to everybody, and I think it's worth at least discussing and considering. And then I wanted to just talk about some assumptions that I see people make when they come to a new country, particularly a country where they can't speak the language. Because I think sometimes we make assumptions about things that aren't always in our best interests, and perhaps we back ourselves more than what we should, but you be the judge. And finally, I just wanted to talk about processes and strategies that we personally employ to try and mitigate our risks, because nobody can be immune from the chances of being done over or somehow making a decision that in retrospect you've dealt with the wrong person or made the wrong decision. So this isn't about getting it perfect every time. You have to make mistakes, it's a part of life, but the aim is to try and minimise the amount of mistakes you make and to learn as much you can from others who have made those mistakes, because hopefully that will be one less mistake that you have to make. In regards to this phenomenon that I speak of, what we've noticed is that when people come to a country where the language is unfamiliar to them, the customs and the laws and the ways of doing things are new, there is a tendency for us to look to somebody to take our problems away. In doing so, what you invariably find in any country that I've been to, those people seem to magically appear. And sometimes they can help you in situations and it can be life-changing for the better. But what we tend to do in this phenomenon is when we meet somebody who can speak that language and can navigate that terrain that's foreign to us, we almost inevitably have a tendency to drop our defences once we, in our own mind, have established that this person is trustworthy. Now that's fine to an extent. You can't go around and not trust anyone in life, and particularly when you move overseas, sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and believe in the better part of human nature, and people will do the right thing by you. And we've done that before and it's worked out well. But what's really important is to always leave the door open for the possibility that this person may not be acting in your best interests. Because what I have seen happen too often, and as I say, Brenda and I have not been immune from this, is when you are so vulnerable and open and it's so foreign to you in every way, the temptation to fall into the trust of someone else who has apparently all of the answers, it's so overwhelming that I don't think I've met anyone who's really immune from this phenomenon. The only way I can think of to at least minimise your chances of falling foul to this, should you have met someone who isn't working in your best interest, is to always just consciously be telling yourself, I trust this person, but I will still verify the information. I will still do whatever I can in this situation to double check what they're telling me, and if they tell me something that just doesn't sound right, I will leave the door open to the possibility that maybe what they're telling me isn't right. We see situations, we spoke to someone very recently who entered into a transaction with somebody here locally, and it was such an absurd situation in terms of the circumstances of the transaction. But this person that we're speaking about who fell foul of this situation is a smart person. They would never have fallen foul of such a situation in the place where they once called home. But because they've come here, their defences have been lowered, this phenomenon has kicked in, and they've just taken it that whatever the person's telling them is just right because they say it's right, and apparently that's the way things are done in this country. Now sometimes that is valid, but this person, even at the time they were being told that, my understanding and suspicion is that they kind of suspected that what they were being told was not totally legitimate. But because of that tendency for us to almost revert to that childlike state where we're helpless and we need that person to come around us and to take away our problems, to help us in this situation, we can lower our guard to the point where we're almost helpless, and it's happening too often. So I just wanted to put that out there and to say this isn't about everyone else. Brenda and I have at times trusted people too much because they seem to come across 100%, but thankfully it must be our overactive imaginations or whatever, but we have a strategy that I'll talk about in a moment that has helped us a lot in this situation, and I think it can help you too. So that is it for what it's worth. Trust but verify, and be aware that when you're in an unfamiliar situation, there is this almost subconscious tendency for us to switch off when we see a face that we think we can trust, and there's kind of like a weird trigger that goes off in your brain where it just says, hand over the keys to the castle, this person is beyond reproach, I trust them even though I've met them for 2 minutes, and everything's going to be all right. I had a good gut feeling about that person, they just seem legitimate. Well, we all think that we've got this sixth sense about people, but none of us do. We get it right sometimes, we get it wrong other times, and we just need to be very conscious of that and really check ourselves every time we're handing the keys of the castle over to somebody, just on the basis that we're in this vulnerable situation and we need this problem to go away. Sometimes you don't have a choice, and in those situations you just pray for the best, because it might be that you're in an emergency situation or whatever. There's a million different scenarios where sometimes you just have to trust the person in front of you, and thankfully in Paraguay, more often than not, that works out well, we have found. But when you are in a petri dish, like looking to come to another country, the sharks and piranhas have got all sorts of ways of finding you. It's not hard to find you when you're online, whether it's on Facebook or whatever it is, ranting to you on YouTube, whatever means they have to get to you. There's ways for people who are looking for easy picks to find people who are in vulnerable positions. Never discount the possibility that that is you. Whenever you're in a situation where you're able to verify information, verify the information. Trust but verify. Relating to that phenomenon is the assumption that I spoke about. One of the assumptions that we notice very often is that people make the assumption, I don't know exactly why, but they assume that a certain demographic will be more trustworthy than the other. And what we've heard recently is, well, we trusted that Paraguayan person simply because we thought that the Paraguayan would be more trustworthy than a foreigner that's in the country and offering a service like residence or whatever. We can say from absolute experience that that assumption is not valid. If you think that one side has got a monopoly on the villainy and the skullduggery that comes with ripping off people that are moving to countries, then it's not correct. There are good people online who are selling services of Paraguayan descent, of Western descent of all countries, and you can't really discern or differentiate those two just based on what country they've come from. Another assumption that's made is because they're Paraguayan, they will know people and they will have ways of doing things that the Westerners won't be able to do. In some countries, that is a really valid observation or a really valid thought process. There are some countries that we've passed through where as a local you can get things done that most Westerners would never be able to get done. They're a bit of a closed shop in that regard. We find Paraguay is not one of those places. We have found that the people who have moved here from Western countries, who have been established here for some time and who have developed relationships with governments and other agencies, that they are as keyed in and as influential as the Paraguayan agents are. Whatever they're selling or whatever service they're offering, there is no monopoly over the person's ability to influence an agency that you might be dealing with or to get something done. I would really caution anybody who thinks that they need to use a Paraguayan just simply because they're Paraguayan and they'll be able to get some magic things done that a Western person wouldn't be able to get. I would challenge that thinking. I really don't think that's valid. Not in Paraguay. It is in other countries, as I've said, but in Paraguay, I've noticed that there's some Westerners here who are very skilled and legitimately connected with the different agencies and individuals that they need to be connected with in order to get things done. And not in a dodgy way. You know, people need to have relationships. Paraguay is a place of relationships. There's no question about that. But it's not a place of exclusivity. Paraguay is a funny place where there still is a differentiation between those who have lived here for generations and those that haven't, but nowhere near as pronounced. And I find that people seem to be able to make really good inroads here after they've been here for a while, if they've done the right thing and if they're professional. There are Paraguayan agents out there who can help with different things, who are brilliant and will do a great job and are as trustworthy as anyone else. But I wouldn't give my full faith, trust and hope in that person simply because they are a Paraguay resident who have been here for their lifetime. If you've made an assumption that's not really based on anything except an assumption, and it might be influenced by that phenomenon I spoke about earlier, then maybe it's time to sit down and reassess. How do you make the decisions that you make about who you're going to use, what you're going to purchase, what you're not going to purchase, where you're going to look, how you're going to do that thing? Some people just shoot from the hip and trust their gut feelings. What we tend to do is have a strategy, though I never really thought it was a strategy until I realised that we tend to do this all the time, and I call it our what-if strategy. Whenever we're dealing with a situation, whether it's looking to employ an agent to get something done or to buy a bit of property or to do whatever we have to do, we inevitably just start the conversation by what if? What if this thing doesn't work? What if we want our money back? What if this person turns out not to be trustworthy? What if that promise that they made doesn't come through? And I never realised the extent to which we do that, but the amount of times we've asked the what ifs and the amount of times it's saved us, because we've walked away from different people or different situations sure of a certain course of action, but as soon as we sit down and we start to do the what ifs and we roll out potential scenarios, both positive and negative, we realise that the mindset that we had when we left the table is very different to the mindset we have now. So that's our personal strategy, and it works for us. It's a very simple one. And when you do the what ifs, you can really fill a butcher's paper with all sorts of scenarios, good and bad. And I think that's so incredibly helpful. And it goes back to a point that I've made in previous videos. When you're doing your what ifs, you're doing it in your own time. You're taking your time. Going back to talking about being scammed and making the wrong decisions and assumptions, when you're applying for your residence, if anyone's asking you for a lot of money before coming here, if anyone's asking you for a lot of money before getting the result, if you don't walk away, well, I'm sorry, but that's really a bad decision. Be very careful about handing money over to anybody before you've either got a result or you're well on the way to getting a result. That is the most critically important information I can possibly share with anybody, and it's on the back of seeing some really unfortunate situations. I'm not talking about a hypothetical here. And I hope that someone out there who's about to make a decision may be listening to this video and it may cause them to make a better decision. So that's my 2 cents in regards to the issue of scams. Having said all this, I don't want to be seen to be spreading alarm. Everyone's getting scammed everywhere and it's so unsafe that you should never go outside the door. Fear isn't the way that we should proceed. Fear isn't something that we should give into or allow to impinge on our freedom. In your own country, you've got a lifetime of experience to call on in terms of all of the times that you've heard people who have ran into difficulties and all of the data that you have from having lived in that country your whole life. Without knowing You've built up a really good immunity to scammers. But when you move to a country where you don't speak the language and things are new, your immunity to scammers is lowered. It feels the same, and to a certain extent that might be the case, but there are significant variances and differences. And because we have a tendency to fall into this trap, this phenomenon, and to make the false assumptions, our immunity is lowered without us even realising it. It's a really subtle trap. We've made the odd mistake. Perhaps we've trusted the odd person more than what we should have, but it's been nothing catastrophic. And when I think back truly, there's been several times where we've done the what if, we dodged bullets left, right and centre. And that's really cool, and we're looking forward to do that more, and hopefully it will protect us moving forward. But nobody's immune. Nobody's immune from making mistakes, but at least we can reduce the amount of mistakes that we make if we put some things in place. I just want people to move forward safely, because seeing some of these things where people are being ripped, just scream at the screen, if only we could have spoken to that person sooner, if we've avoided that. And you don't want to move to a new country and get done over before you've even hopped on the plane. That's not a good start. I hope that's useful. Please let me know, hit me up if you've got any comments or questions, and until next time, take care. Ciao.